Good day, this is Greg Summers and this is the Crafty Summers show, and today we're doing wind chimes. There's a little bit of a breeze out there, it's kind of warm. This would be a good thing to do in the old shop. We're going to start with a couple simple or easy ones, and then we'll move on to a few that are a little bit harder then. The first one I want to do, well, the first thing I want to talk about at wind chimes is you got to have something that'll chime, and it doesn't matter what it is to me as long as it has a good sound to it. So what I do is I go around, if I'm in the old hardware store, I look around and see if I can find something that has a good sound to it, a good tone to it. And gosh, these happen to sound pretty good to me, and they happen to be caps for fence posts. And so what I did is I took 3 of them and I drilled holes in the 3 in the top end like that. I took a piece of twine here and I divided it into 3 pieces, tied a knot in the end, and put a loop at the top so that I can hang it from. It looks like that. I want to cut off this excess string. Oh, there we go. And then the other thing I have to have is something to separate the 3 chimes, and I simply used a triangle on this particular wind chime because there were 3 of them. So I thought triangle 3, hey, it works for me. So I take each string and I put them through the hole. Let's start with 1. I put it through the hole, and then I take the string and I push it through the hole of the wind chime that I'm going to use. And then I have to terminate that somehow, or to get it to hang. And all I'm going to do, if you look down here, is I'm going to take that particular string and tie a knot at the very end of each piece. And then I'm going to tie another knot to make it a little bit bigger. I could use a washer or something that had a hole in it, but I think that works pretty good. So I want to be able to hang it like that. And if I do that and it taps into another one, we have a pretty good sound. If you get 3 that have 3 different tones to them, that probably would be better, but I think these are 3 pretty close to the same. And take that next one and tie it into a knot. Tie a double knot just to make sure it doesn't come loose. You don't want it dropping down, hitting the dog in the head then. Did I do that? Yeah, I did that right. Okay, and third one, the string goes through the hole and goes into the chime. And tie a knot in the end of that one. Wind chimes they can be any size and shape, and you're going to find it out later, as long as they have a good sound to them. I take those 3. Oops, there we go. That's a pretty good light sound to it. Now what I have to do is I have to be able to stabilize this triangular piece, and basically all I'm going to do with that right now is I'm going to take a small wood screw and I'm just going to thread that down into the hole to lock that in place. If it ends up being exactly what I want, then I can just take a little drop of epoxy and drip it on there and lock it in, and it should be pretty good. What I'm trying to do is make the 3 chimes hang down the same length so they all bump into each other. About right there's where I want that one. Put a screw in there. Now this particular chime is going to hang from a tree, and we're just going to let the wind, as the wind moves the limb, these are going to swing around and then they'll bump into each other. And right at the end then, I'm going to take an S-hook, and that's what I'm going to use to hang from the tree. You can take a piece of wire and bend it and do whatever you want with that. And we get a nice light tone to it. And gee, we can find out if the wind's blowing or not by the sound that it's making. And that's our first wind chime.
Yes.
Yeah, and this particular wind chime, this is one that I made previously, and we're going to repair it a little bit, but I want to talk about it because it's a really neat, and it's a pretty common type of wind chime that's made. It's made from tubing, And the neat thing about it's made from different lengths of tubing, and so you get a different tone from each one when it's struck. And it's a material that's pretty easy to come by. This is made out of rigid copper tubing. And I think it has a little bit of brass in it, so that gives it that really nice tone. So we have different lengths of tubing, and you cut them any size you want, as long as you get the sound from them that you think would work well. This particular one has a hole drilled through the top of it from one side to the other side, and what I need to do is run a string through there, and from one hole out the other, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. This is so that I can hang the tubing from the holder, and also when I tie it this way, I get the string in the middle of the tubing so that it'll hang nice and straight. So I've simply wrapped it around through, and then I'm going to tie it together. And the string I use for this particular one, I use a nylon string so it holds up better. And you know, I think the best string to use is like a braided nylon fishing string. And usually it's a dark color, and it works out really well. So now we have that hanging there. Cut off the excess here. Well, I thought I was going to cut that off. There we go. And now I'm going to take this particular piece and thread it through the part that hangs it and get it the right length. And, well, I should talk about this. This one here, I used a piece of plastic, if you can, and the plastic has a number of holes around it, and this one particular one has 5, and they're equally spaced. And then we have one string in the middle, and that's what the clapper part goes on to. And then from the top, I tied a piece of string in each one of those, and then those go up to a hook. And guess what? That hook is the top half of a coat hanger, and that's where we hang it from. So now I have to tie this one through the hole. Yeah, there it is. I'll spin this a little bit so I can get the thread through. There it goes. Thread that through, and I want to make it the same length as the rest of the tubing as they hang down. And that's right there. We'll tie this one off. And we could talk about knots, but just tie one that doesn't come loose. You got that tied. Cut off the excess. Okay, so now we have all those hanging down. In the middle here, the string that comes down through the middle is the part that is the clapper, the part that hits the tubing. And I just simply used a big old washer here because I had a hole in it and it's easy to tie to. And then from that, we have to have something that will spin in the wind and twist, and that's the part that provides the momentum or the motion for the clapper to strike the tubes. So as the wind blows, it'll hit each one of those individually and come up with a little bit of a tone. And be just like being in church, I think. And so we put the hook in the upper half of it, and that's what it hangs from. I have this good big old thing hanging down, and gives us a lot of tone. It's a pretty melodic tone, and it even sounds good. Okay, now we're going to pause for a commercial break. Okay, welcome back from the commercial break, and our next one is the big project, and that is I'm going to take a pressure tank, and this happens to be an air tank that I got at a salvage yard, and actually what I had to do was cut it in half, and so I decided, oh, I can take my hacksaw and start cutting, and I cut and cut and cut, and wasn't getting anywhere. So finally I went to a welding shop, and they have a nice big hacksaw, power hacksaw, and they cut it off for me. So now in this cylinder here I have 2. Ooh, did you hear that? I have 2 tanks now, or two bells, and I'm going to make 2 different wind chimes out of this here. First one, I think I'll use the small one. And since this one had a top in it, like that, and it's really nice and bell shaped, I was lucky. I'm going to take, I think, oh yeah, this here, and this is a screw eye. And I'm going to screw this inside. Actually, well, to tell the truth, I had a coupling nut, which is a long nut like about that size there, and that was welded inside the cylinder, and I screw this inside like that, and that gives me something to hang the clapping part to, or the part that strikes the bell. And I get that in there. That has to be pretty tight. There we go, so you don't want it to fall off. And then I took another one, and that's this one here, and that screws into the top of the coupling nut. So yes, I did have help on this one here, and it, it was a lot better, a lot cheaper, and a lot faster to have someone who knew what they were doing. Not that I don't know what I'm doing, but it's nice to have help. And we have a nut threaded onto that I can turn down and tighten against there to lock it in place. So now I have something to hang it from. The only problem is that is pretty heavy, so wherever you put this, make sure it's on something really stable. And now we have to have something that's going to contact this. Oh man, that is good. That rings for a long time, so it's still ringing. In fact, the way my ears are, it'll ring for 2 or 3 more days, so I'm in good shape. Now I've got to have something that impacts that, and I'm going to use, you know me, I've got this old cut-off blade here, and it's for cutting steel, and it was used up. It's too small now to fit into the machine that it was in there. So I'm going to use that, and that's going to go inside here, and that's the part that's going to ring it for me. So what I have to do, I'm going to thread a piece of string through there. I think I am anyway. Yeah, shoot. Might as well. And I'm using a real heavy nylon string. In fact, this used to be part of an old trout line. So if it's good enough for a trout line, it's good enough for... There, I got that. And now what I want to do is, I'm not sure what I want to do. I want to tie this inside on the loop, inside the bell part here. And I want to tie it so that it just barely, about right there. I'll go inside and tie in a nice big knot inside there. And I could sing a song for you while I'm doing it, but I won't. There we go. All right, I'm going to take the rest of this line here, and I'm going to feed it through this part here. Come down. Oh, this thing is begging to ring. This is great. Tie that off there. Put one more knot in it so it stays in place. There we go. And I have to have something to ring it with, and so, gosh dang, looky here. We just happen to have an extra fish laying around, so we're going to use that. I'll cut this one loose. Take this string here, and I'll just tie it around the tail. Hold steady there. There we go. Okay, we got that. And now I've got to hang this up somewhere. I think we'll go over here to the ladder if you can follow me here. Yeah. There we go. Well, that's just like being out on some voyage and hear the old foghorn going off. And yep, I think that one will work just great. So there's our first one here, and now we're going to go back. Now the second one we're going to do is the bottom half of the pressure tank. And what I did is I took it and I drilled a hole in the bottom of it, and just a regular drill with the about a 1/4 inch bit in it, and got it centered as best I could. And I'm going to use the turnbuckle here, and the turnbuckle here just simply has two threaded parts into it, and you can turn those into each other like that. But I misplaced one of my pieces, so I think it's around here somewhere.
Oh, there it is, Greg.
Ah,
Sorry.
thank you. There we go. Sometimes those pieces float away. You know how that is at home, man.
I was just borrowing it.
Yeah, all right. Okay, we're going to take the turnbuckle now in the two pieces, and the eye or the loop part is going to go in through the top, and the turnbuckle part is going to go into the bottom. And I'm going to use the hook in the turnbuckle to hang the chime on. There we go. And spin that in. Of course, it always takes longer than you think to get that to go in. And there like that. There was a little toad hopping across the floor there, so. Get that tight there. It's almost there now. Yes. All right. There we go. I got that in there. And now we're going to take the part that's going to be the clapper. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. And I need to get a piece of string. Oops, there it is. And tie that on to string, and then the other part goes on the hook. I'm going to figure out where that goes, and I can just make a loop in it. That's going to be right there. Okay, now we got a loop in that piece there, and that goes inside and hooks onto the turnbuckle. Okay, and then we need something to move that around or to chime it with, and I'm going to use actually right now I'm just going to use a piece of metal. That'll spin in the wind. I hook it onto a leader, and it has a nice swivel on it, so I don't have to worry about it wearing out. And then I'm going to put a piece of string through that. Nope, not going to do that. I'm going to take a bigger piece of string. Yep. And put this through the swivel part of the leader. And put this through the swivel part of the leader. Well, doggies. There we go. And then I'll put and tie this on to the part that's going to make the tone or the clapper. And when you do this, or if you make a wind chime, guys, you can do anything you want to do as long as it makes a good sound. There we go. Okay, we got that done. Now, there's one more thing I was going to do with this, since this kind of has a flat top to it, and I think, I really don't want it to be a flat top. So I'm going to take, this is the part I'm going to hang it with, and I'm going to take an old candy dish. Well, it wasn't old, but it is now. And I'll thank my wife later for that when she finds out. Put that on her like that to give it a little bit of a shape to it, and close that down a little bit. Now remember, this is heavy, and I'm going to hang this one up over here too. There we go. And let's see what this one sounds like now. There we go. And now you can decide which one you like the best, and if it doesn't sound very good, you can cut a little more off and see if you can get it to go into a different tone then. Give it a richer flavor, if you will. And that's our show for the day in making wind chimes. And we've got some other ones that you can look at. And, well, wait, we're just going to do one more here. before we leave. But first we're going to pause for a commercial break. Welcome back. The last thing that we're going to do is make a real quick wind chime, and this is from a gallon jug that I cut the bottom out of, and I was going to make a terrarium out of it. That didn't seem to work out very well, so now it's going to be a wind chime because that sounds good to me. Okay, the parts that I need, I have a lid, and it's a screw lid. Actually, this is a Pepsi lid. You don't see those around much, but that's what I have. I hooked a little chain into the bottom of it. I put a screw eye on the top of it, and of course I have a string to hang it from. So this goes down inside the jar like that. Screw it on. That should hold it in place. The string that I'm using is from a string trimmer which broke, and I didn't have much use for it anymore. So we have this part here. And now the clapper, a unique clapper that it is a plastic float out of a, I'll just say stool. And it's new, so it's clean. And then I have a piece of metal attached to it as the part to swing around and make it strike. All I have to do, I screwed a hook into the top of it. And I'm going to hook that on to that part there. And then, if I don't drop it and break it, I use plastic because if I used a piece of metal hitting this here, I thought it'd probably fracture it sometime. So I just used a piece of plastic float. I'm gonna let that swing around. I think that sounds pretty good. I'll get that close to the mic and you go, wow. Wow, okay. That's good. The end of our show now, we're going to look at some other wind chimes that we have hanging about, and maybe you could get some ideas from it and create your own. Here's the traditional tube type wind chime, and after we have it put together, we let it blow in the wind and make its music. This one here is attached to a tree limb, so it'll have a little bit of bounce to it, and then it chimes. Now we go over here to the one that we did. This is the fence cap wind chime, which I simply have 3 of these here, and then let them bounce in the wind and make any music they want. And back here is one of the pressure cylinder ones, and let's see what it sounds like. Oh, that's one of my favorites. It has a really good sound to it. And that'll blow in the wind and twist and go off anytime it wants. And we go over here to this one here, which is simply a scrap light fixtures from an industrial tower. And that has kind of a nautical sound to it. Of course, you had to have a fish hanging on the bottom of it, and you got to have some. We got some wind blowing now. In case you're wondering, we don't have a dog, so this is our watch chicken. It's Brewster the rooster, and he keeps watch over the wind chimes to make sure that nobody takes them. Scares the raccoons off and keeps the cats away. Okay, and then we move over here to the other half of the pressure cylinder. And that's got a nice loud ring to it. And let that croak in the wind for us. Has a good sound to it, revolves around. And switch over here. Here's our little Perrier bottle, a little plastic rod to the leaf on the bottom, and let that have a little ting sound to it. And we move over here to our Wonder Weasel, Garden Weasel wind chime. And it has a real light sound to it. And that gets to blow in the wind. And of course, my all-time favorite here is used to be pot lids that, of course, we used the pan for the birdhouse, so might as well use these for something else. And they're really good. They spin in the wind and they'll clang against each other, so that's a good one. And we'll move over here to the last one here, and this is the old gallon jug. And we got a little float from the toilet. I'm going to have to fix that later. And that gives us a nice tonal sound too. Bounces around. Remember, we use plastic because we don't want to break the glass. So, hey, sounds like fun to me. Okay, that's our last project for the day. I want to thank you for watching. I also want to thank Fremont Hardware for sponsoring the show, and we'll see you next time.